Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Today we're really digging into something big.
Huge.
Huge. Yeah, Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper on Bitcoin.
The one is only.
This is like the birth certificate of cryptocurrency as we know it, right?
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
It's the genesis.
So we're gonna break it down for you,
Absolutely.
and hopefully make it
Yeah.
understandable.
Digestible.
Because it is.
A lot.
Yeah. So if you've ever been curious about how Bitcoin actually works, why people are so excited about it, or even just what all the hype is about,
Right.
this is the episode for you.
Absolutely.
So let's just dive right in. The paper starts off by setting the scene. It talks about the current system that we have for online commerce
Right.
and how it relies heavily on financial institutions to act as intermediaries.
Which, has its downsides.
Right? There are a lot of
Good
downsides. Like,
stuff.
what are some of the things that come to mind for you?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is trust.
Yeah.
Right? You're essentially handing over your financial information to these institutions and hoping for the best.
Yeah, hoping they don't get hacked.
Exactly.
Right.
Or that there are no errors, or that they don't decide to freeze your account for some reason.
Right, or charge you a bunch of fees.
Oh, yeah. The fees
Yeah.
don't even get me started.
And those fees can be especially difficult for micropayments, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Trying to send a few cents or even a fraction of a cent,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work with the current system.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
So Nakamoto saw all of these weaknesses and basically said,
There's got to be a better way.
there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
And that's where Bitcoin comes in.
Right.
So what was their big idea? What was the vision?
So Nakamoto envisioned a system for electronic payments that wasn't based on this blind trust, but instead on something much more elegant. Cryptography.
Okay.
A way to send money directly between parties without the need for a third party, like a bank or a payment processor.
Okay, so cut out the middleman.
Exactly.
Just peer-to-peer.
Peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Electronic cash.
That was the dream.
Wow. And that's what Bitcoin claims to offer.
That's the goal. A completely decentralized system where transactions are secure, transparent, and almost instantaneous.
Okay, but how do we get from point A, our current system, to point B, this new world of Bitcoin? What's the secret sauce?
Well, at the heart of it all is this idea of an electronic coin.
Okay.
Nakamoto describes it as a chain of digital signatures, almost like a trail of breadcrumbs on the internet.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Chains of digital signatures.
Yeah.
Walk me through that a bit slower.
Okay, sure. So imagine a digital ledger,
Okay.
and each transaction is like adding a new line to that ledger. That line records the previous owner of the coin, the current owner, and a digital signature verifying the transaction.
So kind of like a sophisticated digital receipt.
Exactly. But there's a challenge. With physical money, you hand it over and it's gone.
Oh.
Or digital cash. How do you prevent someone from making copies of that digital coin and spending it multiple times?
Ah, right. Like I can't just photocopy a $20 bill, but copying digital information is easy.
Exactly. That's the double spending problem, and it's the main hurdle for any digital currency.
Okay, so how do you solve that?
Well, the traditional solution would be to rely on a bank or some central authority to verify every transaction and prevent double spending.
But didn't Nakamoto want to move away from that central authority model?
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really clever.
Okay.
Nakamoto proposed this system where instead of central authority, we rely on a distributed timestamp server.
A distributed what now?
Basically, a whole network of computers all working together to verify transactions.
Okay, we might need to pump the brakes on that one and unpack that a bit.
You're right. Let's break it down a bit further. This is where the concept of proof of work enters the picture. And to understand that, we need to take a quick detour into the world of email spam.
Wait, really spam? As in those annoying emails I keep trying to send to my junk folder? What does that have to do with digital cash?
Trust me, it'll make sense in a minute.
Okay, Stam, I'm all ears. How does fighting those digital pests tie into creating a revolutionary digital currency?
Okay, so back in the day, there was this programmer named Adam Back,
Yeah.
and he came up with this system called Hashcash.
Here's cash.
Yeah. And his goal was to make sending an email take a tiny bit of effort, computationally speaking.
Okay, so instead of just clicking send, your computer would have to do some actual work first.
Exactly. It wasn't about making it impossible to send email, of course.
Yeah.
Just enough of a hurdle that sending thousands of spam messages would become impractical.
So make it cost a little bit of something to send an email, but not enough to bother regular users.
Right. And is this idea that Nakamoto borrowed for Bitcoin. But instead of emails, we're talking about adding blocks of verified transactions to the blockchain.
Ah, okay. Starting to connect the dots here. So how does this proof of work thing actually work in the Bitcoin world?
So imagine each block of transactions needing a special key to unlock its place on the blockchain. And this key is a hash.
Oh, a hash.
Yeah, basically a unique string of characters that's generated by a complex mathematical function.
Okay.
And finding this hash is where the work comes in.
So it's like a puzzle.
Exactly. The trick is this hash has to meet specific criteria. In Bitcoin, it needs a certain number of leading zeros
Leading zeros. Why is that so important?
because it makes it difficult. You see, finding a hash that meets these criteria isn't about being smart or having a supercomputer. It's about randomly trying again and again until you stumble on the right answer.
So it's like a global game of digital Sudoku where everyone's racing to solve the puzzle, but only one gets the prize.
That's a great way to put it. And to make things even more interesting, the more leading zeros required, the harder the puzzle gets. So in Bitcoin, this difficulty adjusts automatically, keeping the average time to mine a block at around 10 minutes.
Wow. Okay, so that's how they control the speed of new Bitcoins being created.
Exactly.
That's really clever. But let's say I'm a nefarious hacker with a basement full of powerful computers. Couldn't I just outcompute everyone and take over the Bitcoin network?
That's where the distributed part of distributed timestamp server comes in.
Right.
It's not just about one computer solving the puzzle. It's about the collective effort of the entire network.
So it's like a massive worldwide game of tug of war with honest nodes on one side and potential attackers on the other.
Exactly. And as long as the good guys have more pulling power, the system stays secure.
So it all comes down to who controls the majority of the computing power.
Exactly. As long as most of it is in the hands of people playing by the rules, they'll keep adding blocks to the chain faster than any single attacker could.
This is really blowing my mind. It's like a self-governing system where security is maintained by simply participating.
And this idea of participation extends to decision-making power as well.
Decision-making. What kind of decisions?
Well, sometimes there might be slight discrepancies in the blockchain. Maybe two nodes solve the puzzle almost simultaneously, and now there are two competing versions of the chain.
Oh, so how does the network decide which version of the blockchain is the real one?
That's where the computational power comes into play again. Nakamoto called it one CPU, one vote. Basically, the more computing power you contribute to the network, the more weight your vote carries.
So it's a democracy, but instead of voting with ballots, you're voting with your computer's processing power.
You could say that. It's designed so that it's always in everyone's best interest to support the longest, most difficult to create chain. Any attempt to cheat the system would be incredibly expensive and likely futile.
This is incredible, but all this talk about blocks and chains, I have to ask, how does a new transaction actually make its way into this system? I mean, what happens when I hit send on a Bitcoin payment?
Oh, excellent question. Let's trace the journey of a Bitcoin transaction.
So let's say I want to send some Bitcoin to a friend.
Right.
What happens after I click send? Where does my transaction go?
It's broadcast to the network. All those nodes we've been talking about.
Okay.
They're listening. They pick up that transaction.
So it's not like it goes to one central location. It's kind of like going out to everybody.
It's more like a whisper that gets amplified and echoed throughout the entire network.
Okay. And then what happens? Do these nodes gather up all the transactions?
Exactly. They collect them into blocks. Think of them like containers for transactions before they can be added to the blockchain.
Okay, so we've got these blocks filled with transactions ready to go, but they need that special key, the hash, to get onto the blockchain.
Exactly. That's where the proof of work comes in. Remember the puzzle?
Yeah.
Each node is basically racing to solve this puzzle for their block of transactions. The first one to find the solution gets to add their block to the chain.
And they get the reward.
Exactly. They get to mint new Bitcoins. It's their reward for securing the network.
So it's like a little bonus for their efforts.
Exactly. It's a clever way to incentivize participation.
I like it. So let's say someone solves the puzzle. What happens then?
They shout it from the digital rooftops. They broadcast their solution and the block of transactions to the entire network.
And then everyone else double checks their work.
Precisely. The other nodes verify the solution, make sure all the transactions in the block are legitimate. And if everything checks out, they add that block to their own copy of the blockchain.
And that's how it grows.
Exactly. Block by block, a permanent and ever-growing record of every Bitcoin transaction ever made.
And this whole process, this distributed consensus, is what makes Bitcoin so secure.
Exactly. There's no single point of failure. No one entity can control it or take it down. It's incredibly resilient.
And that's pretty amazing when you think about it. It's like a self-governing system where everyone is incentivized to play by the rules.
Exactly. And that was Nakamoto's genius, to create a system that could essentially police itself.
So to wrap things up, we've gone deep into the mechanics of Bitcoin. We've talked about the challenges of digital cash, proof of work, the blockchain. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of how this revolutionary technology actually works.
Absolutely. And if you're still with us, kudos to you for sticking with it. You're officially a Bitcoin whiz now, or at least on your way to becoming one.
There's always more to learn. But understanding the fundamentals, that's the key.
Absolutely. And on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.